Thank you. So yes, we are recording for our folks that can't join us. And just do some brainstorming together to really look at what might be some working topics that we could share information about. We could share ideas and resources from around the region. And so we put together a list of the big topics that we all might have some experience in, might need some support in, might be able to collaborate on, et cetera. And so that's how we set up our agendas for this year. And so I'm glad to see folks. And what we're going to do is go around and just do quick introductions, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the agenda and get our presentations going and make sure that we save some time for the rest of the agenda items. So I am going to start on my screen. So if you want to just do a quick introduction, your name and title, which area of the county you're in is great. And I'm going to start with my super support staff person from the county, which these meetings would not happen in an orderly and organized fashion without Mark. So if you want to do a quick introduction, and then we'll go to Yvette and Polly.
Thank you, Commissioner Lutch. Mark Rosen in the County Commissioner's Office. It's great to see all of you, especially some of you that I've worked with for quite a while over the years, and appreciate the opportunity to support the commissioners and support the work of the consortium.
Hi, everybody. Yvette Bowden. I'm the Assistant City Manager and Director of Community Vitality for the City of Boulder. Thanks for having us for this topic this evening.
Thanks for joining us. Then we'll go to Polly, and then Summer, and then John.
Hi, I'm Polly Christensen, City Council member from Longmont, term limited in November.
Hey, good evening. I'm Summer Laws. I'm also on the policy team with Mark Rosen, and happy to see a lot of familiar faces this evening. Good to see y'all.
I'll say the same. So I'm John Tare, President and CEO of the Boulder Chamber, but former City of Boulder employee working for Mark and sitting in a seat with that. So there you go.
Great. Thanks for all of you for joining us. So we'll go next to Sharon, and then Holly, and then Kyle. Sharon, I can't hear you yet.
That's kind of a newbie thing, right? Sharon King, Small Business Development Center, serving all of Boulder County small businesses.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Holly Rogan. I'm a trustee for the town of Lyons, and Paul Dreyer is here too. He is the chair of the Economic Vitality Commission for Lyons.
Thank you both. And then I believe we're going to Kyle, and then Adam.
Yeah. Thank you, Marta. Sorry, Commissioner, I apologize. I fell asleep apparently. I'm Kyle Brown, Louisville City Council member.
I'm Adam Swetlick, member of Boulder City Council.
Thank you both. And then Paul, and then Devin, and Jeff.
Hi, everyone. As Holly mentioned, my name is Paul Dreyer, and I serve as the chair of the Economic Vitality Commission in Town of Lyons.
Devin Schaff, Burnfield City Council.
Hi, Commissioner and members of the consortium. I'm Jeff Romine. I'm staff at Burnfield.
Great. Thanks, Burnfield, for participating as well. And then we'll go to Zach, then Rachel, and then Megan.
Everyone, Zach Swank, Boulder County in the Office of Sustainability, Climate Action, and Resilience. I manage our business sustainability program.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Garcia. I'm the chairperson for the Latino Chamber of Commerce of Boulder County. Nice to be here.
Thanks, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan McKillop with the Colorado Municipal League. I'm one of the legislative and policy advocates, and I cover economic development. So happy to be here.
Welcome. We'll go to Nora, and then Jessica, and then B. Larson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nora Sines. I'm the Business Services Program Manager at Workforce Boulder County.
Hi, I'm Jessica Erickson, President and CEO of Longmont Economic Development Partnership.
Thank you all.
Hi, I am B. Larson, otherwise known as Barbara Larson. My camera is not coming on for whatever reason. Anyway, I'm Barbara Larson, and I'm with Workforce Boulder County. I am the business support analyst.
Great, thanks, Barbara. We can hear you, so that's the good news in the virtual world, yes. Tanya and then Miranda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya. I am a program manager with Workforce Boulder County. Miranda Fisher. I'm the deputy town administrator for Netherland, and then in September we'll take over as the town administrator.
Great. Well, thank you all. I appreciate you all participating this evening. And I am just going to go really quick through the agenda. If you got that handy, Mark, if you want to throw that in the chat, just so folks can follow along. And what we are going to do, let's see here, where's my little notes? Our topic, obviously, as some of you have joined us, have already said in your titles, we're going to be talking about economic vitality. And when we had this conversation in February, it was around vitality and development, and just to kind of, again, learn, put our heads together and really share out some ideas. So my hope this evening, really from my role, is to hear what other folks are doing. Not just specific to COVID, but just in the realm of economic and development and partnerships, et cetera. So I'm really hoping that we'll have some time for some good discussion and idea processing together. So we have a few different presentations that are going to happen. So we'll do our meeting topics, and then we'll just stay together. We're not going to do breakout rooms this evening, but stay together and just do our questions and answers together for each group. And we will have some time to talk about some old business, to bring that up as a group, and then new business. We typically take a break about right in the middle of our meeting, just so folks can grab dessert or something similar as we finish our meeting. And then I want to make sure, and that's why I want to just say this out loud so you can kind of think about it before we finish up, just to make sure that folks have, if there's any upcoming community events, and I know that's all potentially going to change on Monday, but if there's any events that you're wanting to make sure folks know about that we can help spread the word about, just make sure that you start making notes about that now, so you can share it out with us, so that we can use this time together as most effectively as we can. So that's our plan. I am going to turn it over to our first presenters. And maybe what I should ask, is there anybody else that was planning to present tonight that maybe didn't get an opportunity to RSVP, just for the timing standpoint? Okay, Polly and Devin. Great. Mark, can you help me kind of keep us on track and make sure we don't miss a presentation?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. And then, as we always do, if folks come in tardy, we won't say a word. We'll just welcome them in give them an opportunity to introduce themselves too in between presentations. So, okay, everybody, welcome. And we will start with our first presentation. And
I believe Summer is going to be leading that, or at
oh,
least
yes.
driving, virtually driving.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have several presentations joined together here. And so I think you should be able to see that now. Can folks see that?
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So again, good evening, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm a policy analyst in the policy team within the Commissioner's Office, and also part of the Economic Response and Recovery team. And then, as Commissioner Lochamy mentioned, support our economic vitality efforts and funding throughout the year, our annual funding program. And we're really excited today because at the consortium meeting are a few partners that are working countywide and made themselves available to provide some data and qualitative information about what's currently happening within the economy. And so we're going to try to do this as succinctly and briefly as possible, but just to let you know, we may move quickly, but we'll share these slides with you because as Commissioner Lochamy mentioned, we really want to have time for each of the communities to share out. So thank you again to the partners that are doing that. We have the Boulder Economic Council from and John Taylor is here. We also have the Small Business Development Center and Sharon King. Thank you for joining us. And Rachel Garcia from the Latino Chamber. And then some staff from the Workforce Boulder County, who I think will share some really interesting information about what's happening within the employment sector. And all of those folks are part of a collaborative group of cities, towns, and economic vitality organizations that have been convening since even before the pandemic, but more regularly during the pandemic, to coordinate our efforts and our investments, our responses, and to stay clear in terms of what the current public health guidance was, because that's one of the most challenging issues that's happened during the pandemic, affecting both employees and businesses, was just staying current on the changes that we've all gone through. So this is a list of all the folks that have been a part of that group. And then I've already mentioned the different organizations that have made themselves available today. So I think just to save time, I'm gonna pass it right over to John.
Great, thank you, Summer. And I'll just open by just saying, listen, I had the opportunity to present today, but when I look around this panel of folks who are here today, who are on that list that Summer mentioned, we would not have gotten through this pandemic from an economic perspective without the collaboration of all the economic development. I look at my friend Jessica, and business support, SBDC, et cetera, and all the communities. And so, when I talk about Yvette, I think about, we never worked so closely, damn, together, and Summer led us all through this. So thank you, Summer, so much. So I'm just going to start by giving some just brief data so that I think paints some interesting picture for you, and then just a little bit of background on some feedback that we've been getting from the businesses that's more on the ground picture of what's happening out there. So first of all, just to be very clear, on behalf of a regional consortium of our economic development and business support organizations, we're all tracking hundreds of indicators, and that's a lot of information to follow, but all of it gives us a pulse of the economy. What we've picked out today are a few highlights that I think give more of the sort of just key indicators for your sense of where the economy is. So just starting with just a baseline of our employment. Well, what we know is that we have seen some uptick in the amount of job loss that we had across the county. And in Boulder is just an example of that, but we're down. We're still down about 5% in the volume of jobs. And then if you go to the next slide there, Summer, yeah, thanks. A key message, I think, overall is that what we're seeing, and I think others will attest to this, is that the recovery has been uneven. And the line that often is stated is that if you make, let's say 75,000 or more, the pandemic did not have the impact that it did on those who are in the lower economic brackets. And this data is from December, but as we have seen the new data coming in that we're starting to process, it tells the same story, that in essence, the lower echelon, lower income employees are feeling the greatest pinch from the economic difficulties. Next slide, please. We are seeing an uptick in job postings. And so for many that would say, oh, the recovery is on and this is a positive thing. Well, the truth is that there are many barriers for folks taking on the jobs that they see out there. So if you say, wow, there's they're charging, they're paying $20 now for somebody at McDonald's or something like that. Well, you know what? That doesn't cover the cost of, let's say, childcare, which is difficult to access, or housing opportunities that have become enormously, unbelievably more challenging for our workforce. So that is sure a positive indicator of jobs that are available. but it doesn't paint the picture of the challenge of marrying those jobs with folks who may be needing that, looking for those jobs, but can't access them because of other challenges they're facing, which we'll address. Next slide. Another element of our economic challenges that we're seeing across the board is just what it means for the change in the character of our economy. And so you see most dramatically the office vacancies that are going up now, and that trend continues. Now, what does that mean? Well, we tend to be a net importer of jobs into our region. So when we talk about negative impacts that are uneven, think about the impact for our smaller retail, restaurants, service industries that generally benefited from that inflow of workforce that now don't see a full house at lunch, that don't have those business meetings happening in their communities. You see that story told through this office vacancy issue. And just the next slide, if you will. Most dramatic, and probably something that I think is worth us all pausing and reflecting on, is the difference in what we see across the board in terms of folks deciding not to do remote working. It's as you see, one of the highest amongst mid-sized metros, and 189th out of 192 metros overall. What does that mean? That means, again, that those workers who used to come and feed much of our retail, restaurant, et cetera, businesses that are many of our small independent businesses, they are going to feel the impact of this pretty dramatic shift in working conditions. So just something to be very conscious of. That then trickles down to their workforce and the impacts that they're feeling. Next slide. So switching just from the data and just giving an overall picture, and this is a complicated graph, but just to, and much of it is intuitive, right? So we knew that folks needed to social distance, and they were facing some economic hardships. And what is most dramatic is the response has been the amazing, as people say, we've had 5 years of advancement in folks adopting digital technologies in a single year. And that's in all the different areas, from sales to education online to personal behavior and elements of quality of life, their entertainment, for example. So there's all sorts of hypotheses around what we expect to happen. Nobody knows for sure, but there's a sense that 20 to 30% of folks will now generally work from home, and that's either in fully or part-time work at home. And then also online learning will be much more prevalent. Well, that has a direct impact on our economy if you reflect again on that workforce challenge. And then you start to see the new normal elements. So you start to see folks bringing onshoring, which can be a positive to address supply chains and more localized. But then you also see changing demand for real estate, and how that's could have a significant impact. It's opportunities, but it's also a negative impact for certain elements of our economy. You also see social justice reactions to this. As the economic impacts are uneven, there are legitimate concern from folks who want to address those impacts, and we need to be aware of that. We also acknowledge that just even the small example of more takeout restaurant activity has driven more interest in environmental responses to that, and trying to make sure that we don't just create a whole new stream of throwaway single-use products. I could just go on, but you just start to see the transition that we're seeing in our economy. Much of it, again, a hypothesis, but we're seeing examples of it in some of the data that I outlined. So finally, we did a significant if you just move to the next slide, we did a significant amount of outreach directly to our business leaders to ask them regionally, what are the needs that you have in response to COVID. And I highlight, I mean, there's a lot here, there's more, and you'll get the slides so you can walk through it yourself, but there's some that are definitely worth highlighting. So we still, and you may, think that you don't get to hear this as much, there's still a need, in particular when you think of independent solopreneurs and service industries, they still need financial assistance. There's a great deal of property tax concern because that has not changed significantly. That has actually gone up dramatically at a time when these businesses are now just getting back on their feet. So they're looking for some sort of relief in that area. Workforce recruitment, talent is just, it's enormously difficult. I mentioned that, yes, there are plenty of jobs out there. There are people who are available to take those jobs, but there are barriers for them getting them. And examples of that are health and wellness and childcare. Those are key concerns that are things that are keeping folks from taking on some of those jobs that are out there in the community. Another one that has I think anybody who has tried to order a bike or a new refrigerator would know that supply chain is just dramatically crimped by this COVID. And it's because all of these businesses around the country and then our suppliers are all constrained by their ability to produce these supplies and the equipment that is necessary to drive our businesses because of COVID circumstances. And then the final thing, just I'll say, is broadband access, digital inclusion. We need to do a better job making sure that, and this is the feedback directly from our businesses, that all of our businesses have access to the broadband that allows them to get online, allows their employees to access the workplace off in a remote condition. Housing inventory, I know an issue the Consortium of Cities continues to work on. That is pricing folks out of our market and making it difficult for them to attract employees. And then finally, just again, getting back to the equitable nature of this recovery, and something that I think we, the organizations, the economic development authorities in this region are very focused on making sure that we're not just saying that the economic challenges are over, because you see that many of our businesses are thriving. We need to make sure that we lift everybody in this economy, or it will have long-term impacts, let alone the humanitarian and social injustice of it. So there's my summary.
Thank you so much, John, and for covering so much in a short amount of time, and also for the work countywide that you and your staff have been doing. So really appreciate you providing us. Thank you. And I know we're kind of quickly moving through this. I'm going to pass it over now to Sharon King with the Small Business Development Center. Sharon, if you're ready.
Yep, I'm ready. I'm setting my timer. This is a race.
No worries.
Okay, so for anyone who is not familiar, I'm with the Boulder Small Business Development Center, SBDC. We're a nonprofit assisting businesses in Boulder County, but we have 14 sister organizations around the state, all reporting into the Office of Economic Development, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, OEDIT, and then there are about 1,000 SBDCs in the country, all reporting to the SBA. So we get to tap into other levels of government, and that has been very useful during the pandemic. Okay, so we provide business and technical assistance, one-on-one confidential consulting at no cost, practical workshops and programs, and connection to resources, including financing. And I won't, as I go through this chart, I won't keep repeating consulting and workshops, because we find resources once we hear there's a need. And that's kind of the bedrock of what we do. So this is all anecdotal, very much so. And it's simple language, and people got right to the point when we asked. And we asked in a couple of different ways. Throughout the pandemic and prior, we have a team of 50 consultants that work with us, and businesses, it's a confidential situation. They share what they need, where's the hurt. And then we try to figure out how to match up resources for them. So that's been going on a long time. In June, we actually sent out a survey. We get measured and funded by economic impact, whether they infuse capital, create jobs, things like that. And we sent it to about 2,000 companies that we did consulting with in the last 2 years. And then we did a follow-up phone calls to those 2,000. And it was, how are you doing? How can we help? And by the way, did you get any of these economic impact numbers that we can count? We got a decent response. I don't have a rate for you yet. We're still in the middle of it, but people were very eager to talk. And the big thing that we hear is, we can't believe that you care, which is not a good comment to hear, because we want them to believe that we all care, because we've been working really hard on this. So the things we heard, uncertainty, and especially this week, it's all that people are saying. I want to actually give you one quote that just came out from someone on Monday. They suggested that the county and local government hold off on committing all the ARPA money to see what develops due to the Delta variant. No one knows what to expect by the fall, and no one really knows what's going to be needed. And, you know, I think they all went through very tough times a year and a half ago through the entire year as we watched. And they more than anyone know that if they got through it, they had to do a little bit of dancing. So they would like some help with that. Communications needed across the board. And then standards that business can adhere to. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, so I'm going to hold off on that. The other thing we heard is, you know, if we only heard about, this goes to the communication, if we only heard about these resources before, it could have helped us. You know, I went to get a PPP loan and I entered the information wrong, and it's taken me months to correct it, that kind of thing. Some of these things are exactly what John said already, and we've been, some of it's very intuitive. They've been unable to hire, which increases the cost of labor. So there's a lot of collaboration that goes through all of this. The question is, can we chip away at some of the causes as we tease them out? We're doing a childcare program to help businesses get certified for home-based childcare. We're doing one in Spanish. It actually starts tomorrow. And then if that's successful, we'll do it again in Spanish and then in English. So we're looking for, you know, where's the need, and can one of us help fill it? Supply chain, cost of materials. The only thing I can add is we think there may be an opportunity to link a materials grant to county goals. And we're going to talk a little bit about a collaboration we hope to do with PACE later. That'll come later. Funding, we're still hearing no loans, all grants. That's what they want. Those are three things that we do and have been doing through the pandemic on the right side in order to help the businesses with all of the funding resources. Marketing help, they suddenly are awakening, and I know some amongst us do not think that businesses are ready to really improve their online presence, but we're hearing that they do want help. They're kind of getting it, that this isn't changing anytime soon. Technology, we did some programs in Spanish to help businesses start to use Zoom and other platforms to reach their customers, and then tools to do business. You know, how did you do no touch, you know, restaurants, how you would do a no touch system in order to get paid for the food that you're delivering or getting picked up. And that was pretty much part of our helping the Latinx community. Next slide, and I'm going to go really fast through this. It's no surprise that they need increased revenue and sales. What we did find is that there are businesses that are doing very well, some that you wouldn't even expect. There are businesses that are absolutely pre-pandemic levels and need help and are ready, willing, and able. They've survived they need to actually get back to doing business well. And a lot of our businesses are gone. So navigating in-person versus remote, John talked about that already. Space-related issues, affordability is huge, and we've been hearing it all over the place. We get about 50% of our requests from startups, which I think is interesting, tells a lot about our community and our country in general. And then environmental sustainability, we did a pilot program in 2011 and could only get 5 businesses to really participate on it. We really think that the time has come, and if we can use grants to kind of to incentivize action, we really think that there could be a really strong partnership here to make some good happen. So I'm going to stop there so that we get to hear from everyone. And thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sharon. It's much appreciated. And thanks again for also moving through so quickly and covering a little bit of time. So we will share again these slides. So now we're going to pass it over to, let's see if my slide will advance, to Rachel Garcia and Latino Chamber. And I think also Berenice Garcia Tellez is with us this evening. And so I'm going to hand it over to you two.
Thank you so much, Summer. So I'm Rachel with the Latino Chamber, and Berenice is here as well. So thank you for having us and hearing from us this evening. So for those who may not know, the Latino Chamber is a county-wide organization, and we're here to build, strengthen, and promote the interests of Latinx businesses, maximize economic development and job creation through advocacy and programs that really generate success for the Latino business community and greater business community as well. So the COVID-19 virus and rise of the Delta variant, they continue to threaten our community as vaccination rates remain the same and really below that of the least vaccinated states in the country. Information from trusted resources in the community, as well as access to vaccines and other resources, is really needed to dispel myths and misinformation being spread about the virus and vaccine, really to help improve these rates. Latinx workers and businesses are vital to the core functions of our local market, as we see in healthcare, restaurants, food service, commercial, residential cleaning, construction, transportation, and more, and really remain the frontline essential workers and also entrepreneurs in our county. So relief is needed for our business community in the areas you see listed below in those bullet points in order to really recover from the pandemic results. Funding is especially crucial for more vulnerable small businesses in the Latinx community in order to support the less capitalized, underbanked, linguistically isolated, and entrepreneurs who are just getting started. Staff shortages have uniquely affected Latino entrepreneurs where family members have been required to step in, sometimes leaving other jobs. And businesses who did not have an online presence before the pandemic are hesitant or unsure of how to get started and also how to tap into new markets like the Anglo community. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay. So there is a lot of opportunity to build confidence around the vaccine by bringing accurate information through trusted resources to the Latinx business and greater community. Also committing resources for outreach initiatives to really get boots on the ground from our community and in our community in order to build engagement and continue to organize community equity vaccine clinics with evening and weekend availability in neighborhoods, vaccinating at job sites, carnicerias, and other trusted places for the community. We also see a lot of opportunities to exist the Latino small businesses by really expanding upon community services and furthering efforts to get the word out about local, state, and federal resources that may be available. So we found that webinars, on-demand videos, one-on-one assistance have been reliable tools for us to inform and assist Latino entrepreneurs, especially to get the word out about funding opportunities and assist with applications. And often we are finding that additional one-on-one support is required for technology setup and initiation before an entrepreneur may be able to tap into and take advantage of these available resources. And so we've relied heavily on partnerships like the SBDC for providing specialized consulting for businesses. We've used non-traditional channels like Facebook, WhatsApp, text message campaigns, and collaborating with trusted community partners as successful ways of reaching Latino entrepreneurs, and have found that it's not enough to just produce materials in Spanish. It really requires these non-traditional outreach to get the word out and reach the right people. We do see room for new opportunities to support businesses in really gaining access to technology equipment, software licenses, and marketing website services. We are hearing that from small businesses, as well as accessing resources through the county's sustainable business programs to bring accessible zero waste materials and services to our businesses, especially restaurant and food service. Okay. So our continuing collaboration between the economic development partners in the county have been helping us bridge the gap between the Latinx and other communities and continue to raise visibility for our Latinx entrepreneurs so that the unique needs of the community are heard and understood, and also our successes. Because despite being disproportionately affected by COVID-19, the Latino businesses and workers are continuing to step up during the pandemic, and through this resiliency are poised to help drive economic recovery efforts as we work to improve the vaccination rates in our community. I'm going to now turn this over to Berenice for further insights and upcoming events. Gracias, everyone.
Thank you, Rachel. This is Berenice Garcia-Tellez. I am the Vice Chair for the Latino Chamber of Commerce. I'm happy here with you all, and I just want to provide a little bit details in what is coming and what we are doing. And as my colleague said, it's time to recognize that Latino businesses are doing success, are contributing to the economy. They are the essential workers. We are in restaurants, we are cleaning, we're in landscaping. So it's time to recognize this work that they are doing and also support them. And the Latino Chamber of Commerce we're putting together the Latino Business Month. The Latino Business Month is a strategy to provide visibility and opportunities in education, marketing, technical assistance for Latino businesses. So in September, we're going to have a workshop series in what is the due diligence a Latino businesses need to follow to open a successful business in Boulder County. So we're going to have planners, tax preps, inspectors that will speak in Spanish and tell you, if you're going to open a food truck, you need this. If you're opening a restaurant, you need this. If you want to be in this street, these are the permits that you need. And it's going to be in Spanish. And we're going to provide interpretation to English. What else we're doing? We are putting together a Latino passport where we are inviting all Latino-owned businesses in Boulder County to participate. This will help us. This will help them to increase revenues, high visibility, and invite all of you who are here in this call to consume, to contract, to get services from Latino businesses that they are some of the most impacted from COVID. So please, I really invite you to participate in the Latino Business Month. And then we have a kickoff event on September 18. We're going to have a business expo where Latino businesses will present their product services. So please also join us on September 18 in Longmont. We're going to be sending all the information to Summer to distribute for yourself. And we're also continue the collaboration with Marta Lochemin El Paso and Ricardo Cabrera on the Hispanic Wealth Project to increase financial literacy in our communities and continue supporting vaccination clinics. And Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Berenice and Rachel. I really appreciate your work countywide and your leadership. I just wanted to pause for a second and ask Mark, do we need to move over to the committee presentations for a moment? Or also to ask Yvette in terms of timing?
Yes, thank you, Summer. And Yvette, it's up to you, Yvette. Do you have a few minutes to give your presentation now?
I do, and I apologize to everyone. I have a 15-year-old that if I'm the last mom this evening, it will not be a good thing. But I'm going to go get her, and then I'm going to come back. So if you could put up the presentation, I will go through this, and then I'm going to drive, and then I'm going to come back. But I will not talk to you while I'm driving.
Hey, so just real quick, I'm going to put in the chat the access to the full list of economic indicators, so just so people know what that's all about.
Great, thank you. And I was just gonna, along those lines, John, thank you. Yeah. Folks, put your contact information in the chat. If we were in an event right now, we would be sharing business cards and we'd be mingling and touching base on some of these ideas and these thoughts that have come up and that have been shared. So let's do the best we can virtually on that. And I think, while we're waiting for Yvette, if folks have a question, this would be a great time to have a question of our speakers. And
actually, Marta, I think Yvette needs to give her presentation now, and then she'll come back later and be available for questions.
Oh, I didn't see you were back. I'm sorry, I misunderstood, and I'm looking at the. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. And is Yvette's presentation there? Can you all see it?
Yes, I can see it. Okay. Can everybody else see it?
Yep.
Great.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned before we got started, I'm from New York. I talk very fast, but hopefully not too fast. We can go to the next slide. I want to thank everybody who's already an outstanding, amazing partner through this challenging time. I'm going to fly through 2 slides very quickly about a little bit about Boulder. So everything we're doing now and always is tied back to the comprehensive plan, and the economy is covered in goal area 5, where we talk about the importance of having quality employment opportunities, household income stability, provision of goods and services available for all residents that they can afford and are interested in based on their characteristics, and contributing to our quality of life, including the provision of sales tax revenues that fund many, many community services in Boulder. Next slide. So just so you know, Boulder, although has a lot of big businesses, most of the businesses are small. 78% have less than 10 employees. And those small businesses provide nearly half the jobs and roughly 40% of the wages in Boulder. Businesses with 100 or more employees represent only about 2% of our businesses, but 37% of the jobs in Boulder. We have a large commuting workforce. Notice I did not say in commuting. It's both ways. There are just as many people who drive out of Boulder as drive in. And that's really at a state of flux, pretty much what John said about the shifting situation that the pandemic has brought us. We rely heavily on retail sales generation, and that contributes about 50% of the general fund revenues, excluding utilities. So it's a major issue. Next slide. There are 4 pillars to our economy in the city of Boulder. The university, with about a $380 million presence in the state, 45,000 people showing up, whether staff or students, very much in a state of flux when the university shut down, and now as they're coming back in a different way. The federally funded labs are a major presence, 17 labs, over 4,000 employees, and over $1 billion annually to the local economy, huge. Our small businesses or other businesses, about 7,000 employers with wages over $8 billion. These are people who are owning homes in all of the surrounding cities and now some of the outskirts cities. So it's very important that we think about the diversity of our economy. And one group that's not here tonight, but I wanted to hold up, is tourism. In 2019, 400 accommodation and food services businesses employed about 9,500 workers in Boulder and generated over $10 million in accommodation and short-term rental taxes alone. Next slide. So John talked about our plethora of economic indicators, and we're very thankful for the partnership with Sharon and John and the Convention and Visitors Bureau and all of you. But we've got a couple that we hold out special. Retention of employment, which is basically business presence and commercial vacancy that we look at. Qualified workforce across disciplines. So we look at employment levels and industry concentration. The perceived ease of doing business, specifically around startup activity, and we take a lot of business surveys. I'll have something about that in a second. Our revenue generation stability, a sales tax generation, accommodations tax, and things that come from tourism. And then frankly, access to affordable and inclusive goods. And we recently completed a citywide retail study and do community surveys to see how people feel about that. Next slide. So I'm not going to bore you with all of this other than to say that 90% of the people in this meeting contribute to how we measure the economy in Boulder. And all of these things come together to help us with the university and the Boulder Economic Council and so many other groups, figure out where we are at any given time. Next slide. At the beginning of the pandemic, all of you were with us in a room. I think, John, I don't know when we had our first cup of coffee that morning, but it was we knew that we had to work together, and we're very thankful for the partnership, including the county, that helped us aid businesses in strategy development, retooling work, frankly, modeling what would be an anticipated long recovery period. None of us could have seen how long, or that it'd still be evolving, and reviewing the gaps that will help support arts, nonprofits, contractors, gig workers, and all these other things. This work continues. Next slide. We do a lot of survey. We write a lot of our own surveys, but we also have great partners that help us write surveys. The initial impact of COVID was severe. So 95% of businesses reported that it was impactful to them. 79% said significant. We all know the hardest hurt industries, and that it has hurt definitely women and minority-owned businesses more than others. Next slide. Over 80% of reported making staffing changes then, everything from furloughs and layoffs to reduced wages. Next slide. The financial impact has been devastating to a lot of businesses, but not all businesses. And while many are recovering well, there are still big pockets and a lot of uncertainty. I won't rehash what Sharon and John have already said. Next slide. So we repeated some of our survey questions in October and went out to about 5,000 of those businesses across our community. They continue to report the negative impacts. They're excited, or continue to be nervous-sided, let's call it, to be open and have tourism back. But still, there's a lot of trepidation and a lot of change to come. The health restrictions are going to really be impactful, but necessary, and people understand that. And they are changing their operations. Most change their operations. They're expecting these things to be temporary, but some things like new cleaning protocols and remote work are looking like they might be longstanding. This isn't even in my slides, but I just hot off the presses. We just are completing our primary employer survey, and 72% of respondents said that 1/2 or more of their employees are currently living outside of Boulder, primarily in the surrounding towns, but 87% say that they're going to have at least 20% that are not coming back to the office. Next slide. So how are we addressing the economy? We did 4 rounds of small business grants, a local gift card, which by the way sells out when you pay people to shop. That kind of worked. For a minute anyway. Subsidized third-party meal delivery to help the restaurants. We call that restaurant SOS. We renegotiated leases with all of the city tenants in our special districts. We stood up a temporary outdoor dining expansion program that was quite speedy and with a lot of collaboration across other towns. Winter Pivot helped our retailers. A lot of operating support with help of the PACE program and other groups. We did a lot of promotional marketing of our local businesses through the Convention and Visitors Bureau and our special districts. We ran ads in English and Spanish. Thank you very much to Latino Chamber for all your support and help. And then direct contact, which I'm going to give a lot of credit to the Chamber for helping with. Next slide. So the role of the city has been interesting in this. We're going from response to trying to get some degree of stabilization. I still think we're there. And although we're starting to talk about recovery, it's not by any stretch over. Next slide. A couple of weeks ago, Adam Swetlick, who is in this call, helped with the rest of council validate our guiding principles and intended outcomes of where we are now. So we're looking at the city organizational financial recovery, community recovery, inclusive economic recovery, and then some transformative long-term investment. It was said earlier that people, I know Sharon, people are hoping we don't spend all of the ARPA money up front on restoration of services. We've been very thoughtful, and I don't want to get ahead of council, but our budget process is where all of you are. And so we're moving forward with the Finance Committee this week and a presentation at the end of August to talk about some direction in that regard. Next slide. So where are the opportunities? Everything y'all have already said, affordability. And it isn't just where people live. We're seeing huge problems with commercial viability. There might be spaces that are vacated, but people can't afford them. They can't afford the tenant finishes. They can't afford the move expense. They can't stand up a new kitchen. So some creative thinking or shared spacing might be a really interesting concept there. Responding to the impact of remote work, and that includes the next item, which is addressing the digital divide. It's so important that the kids be able to learn wherever they are, but boy, do we need this for businesses as well. And there are other worker impacts, much of which you've heard already. Inclusive recovery and workforce development, I think, goes together. One does not go without the other. And I, for one, am very excited to potentially talk about employee ownership in some of these businesses. Infrastructure project readiness, because I still am silly and believe we're going to have an infrastructure package. Yay. So we want to try and be collaborative and thoughtful together there. And then really listening to all of you in regional collaboration and resilience, that'll be so critical. So I think that's the end of my presentation. I think that was this very speedy New York speak. And I'm going to go get in the car and then I will be right back. But thank you so much for your attention. And thank you for having me visit with you.
Thank you, Yvette. And then Commissioner Lochamy, we still had a presentation from Workforce Boulder County. Did you want to transition back to that before we do the round robin presentations?
Yep, let's go ahead and do that. Thank you.
You bet. I'm going to share my screen again. And I may have to just skip a couple slides here to get us back to where we were. Let's see here. And there, I think we are ready. I know Nora and Barb and your team are here, so I think I'll just turn it right over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Summer. So I am Nora Sines, Business Services Program Manager at Workforce Boulder County, as I introduced myself a little earlier. And I'm going to be co-presenting with Tanya Hievich, who is our Program Manager of the Community Learning and Empowerment team, as well as Barb Larson, who is one of our data analysts on our business operations team at Workforce. And we're covering for Aaron. So just bear with us. If there's anything that we don't cover and we needed to, please let us know at the end. So as you may know and can imagine, we have been working diligently since the pandemic to address the employment and therefore also unemployment needs of our community. We quickly launched our services to become virtual after the beginning of the pandemic and have really not stopped since. You can go to the next slide. Some of the things that we're going to cover in this presentation is a little bit of what we're working on. We have gone after some grant opportunities, and then Barb is going to go over some data, which is really going to be driving our work over the next couple of years. in our programming as well, which Tanya will go over. So some of the areas that we're going to be focusing on in the next 12 months is going to continue to be supporting folks who have been laid off, who are looking to gain employment, folks who might be making, as we know, and we might have seen in articles or in the news, there's a lot of folks who are making career changes in the current economy with a lot of the opportunities and lack of talent that's really providing mobility opportunities for people in certain industries and occupation. We're also going to be focusing on training. We have an occupational skills program where we can fund for different opportunities in work-based learning, short-term training for individuals who are seeking to obtain some sort of certification. And then also we will be focusing specifically on different populations such as veterans, new Americans, so the immigrant community, folks who are in low income brackets, BIPOC communities as well. We are currently already working through a Young Leaders Academy program that we launched earlier this year that's focusing on young adults between the age of 16 to 24 in those populations, as well as folks. We're going to be serving folks with disabilities and older adults. And more recently, we have been planning to launch a training for the business community for minority businesses around anything from hiring talent, retaining talent, training their talent, as we know that not only finding new talent is a challenge, but also employers are starting to and having to look at really how to retain the current employees that they have so that they can avoid some of the turnover statistics that we've been seeing. Next slide, please. So along those lines, I think I got into this a little bit, really focusing on our business partnerships and supporting the business customer is going to be a driving force that we're going to be working on over this next year because really we need both. I think that there's now this fork in the road where in this economic climate, both the businesses really need the talent as much as folks need the opportunities, where sometimes in other economic and labor market we haven't seen in recent years. So I think really addressing that opportunity to, again, why training and connecting people through work-based learning opportunities such as internships, apprenticeships, it's such an opportunity to do that because while some of the folks have said there's also a lot of disparities, but specifically to certain populations, whether it be of color, folks living in poverty or in some of those lower income brackets, there's also an opportunity here to connect them to maybe higher paying jobs or industries that require little training, or through an apprenticeship program where they can be trained and earning wages at the very same time. So we're going to be focusing on all of those areas of our work. We're going to be utilizing data to really inform kind of where we are making pivots, if you will, because as a lot of you have said and we're experiencing, things are also changing so quickly. And there is such a sort of uncharted territory that we're on and that we can't really see very far. So we're trying to be agile and really addressing the job seeker and the business need as much as possible. And I'm going to hand it over to Tanya, who is going to continue this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Nora. I'm Tanya Ievich. I'm the Program Manager of Community Learning and Empowerment Team here at Workforce. Workforce will be receiving in through HB 211264 funding about $1.2+ million with the focus of, and Nora touched on some of this, reskilling, upskilling, and next skilling our job seeking community, or people who are already employed. So reskilling would be for folks who have been underemployed or unemployed and are looking to retrain in a new skill so they can pivot to a new industry. Upskilling would be for folks who are already employed and can need that additional skill set to really allow them to retain in their job or continue to advance in their current organization where they work. And next skilling is really that planning for the future and skilling folks so that they can be ready for the jobs that are to come. And we're going to be receiving, like I said, $1.2+ million. That is going to be anticipated to serve 293 individuals. When an individual comes into our organization, we really value the human-to-human connection. So those 293 folks will be they will be getting short-term training to obtain an industry recognized credential that can be viable in our community, as well as really that one-on-one support through career counseling. We do a lot of different ways of meeting people through exploring different career options, particularly if they've been unemployed for a while and need to change directions, as well as really confidence building and getting folks ready and prepared to enter into that new job or to really advance in their current job. The funding itself will also cover things like tuition, fees, and books that they might need, employer provided training, incumbent worker training, work-based learning, which is internships and apprenticeships, as Nora mentioned, any kind of supportive services that folks might need to get them going and ramping up into the job world, such as maybe new boots or clothing for the job that they're going to be entering into, and things of that nature. And then activities that really support job quality initiatives with employers and job seekers combined. Innovation grants, we will also be receiving a little over $1 million from the Colorado Workforce Development Council. And this is what we'll be actually contracting out with partners here in the community. It really was for the purpose of really joining the community together in this kind of recovery period to really improve the outcomes for learners, for workers, particularly targeting underserved populations. And Nora went over those populations that we're really trying to focus in on in this new era, and really promoting these partnerships that we already have and really strengthening and deepening them to come together to co-create solutions around some of the problems, as others have mentioned, as an example of digital divide. So our Workforce Development Board will be heavily involved in this process. It will be a competitive process to look at new development, to really enhance existing programs, to strengthen connections between our partner agencies, really with that overall goal of gaining employment and retaining employment. As far as specifics around when this is going to occur, we're still waiting from the state for further details. They're going to provide us with a timeline and guidelines, and like I said, it will be a formal process that will and competitive that we will be launching probably, if I had to look into my crystal ball, maybe sometime in the fall. That's the end of this slide, and I think that's, I'm going to kick it over to Barb Larson.
Thanks. So there we are. In addition to being the workforce data analyst, I am also a member of a statewide workforce data group called WIDE. And these slides came out of a conversation we were having based upon what you hear in the news, that people aren't going back to work because they're lazy, people just don't want to work, people are happy staying home. So we started to do some investigation. This slide is looking at the state of Colorado, and it shows the intersection between weekly salary and the amount that somebody would get from both unemployment and the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which you can see where it intersects. It's at $39,000 a year, which fits with what a sustainable or a living wage would be for a single person in Boulder County. That's per the MIT living wage calculator, where a living wage for one adult with no children in Boulder County is $38,545. So in this, we use that number as our base. Approximately 70% of the occupational categories within Boulder County pay a starting annual wage that is under that $39,000 per year. And that's in 2021. 63% approximately of all the positions within Boulder County pay below that amount. And I don't know if that makes sense. There's occupational categories And then there's positions within each of those categories. So that's where the difference is in those two metrics there. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. Okay, so this is looking at part-time workers. And here they would have to, the intersection is even higher. Part-time workers who work 25 hours a week would need to make $30 an hour or more in order to exceed the unemployment and FPUC benefit estimated payment for the same wage. Now in Colorado, the state of Colorado, 5% approximately are involuntary part-time workers, but that doesn't cover people who have to work part-time or choose to work part-time. Here in Boulder County, we kind of have an advantage because 85% of the people within Boulder County have are educated. We are a very educated community, and education is part of it's what occupations often are looking for, the ones that pay higher amounts. And the next slide. So in looking at Boulder County, a wage less than $39,000 per year may not be really attractive to people returning to the labor force because it doesn't offset, first of all, the financial benefits of collecting UI and FPUC, but it also doesn't cover what they need it to cover. This table shows occupational groups, the number of openings, so there's quite a few openings, the turnover rate, you'll notice the turnover rate is high, and then it shows the annual and the entry annual earnings and the median earnings. We can go to the next slide. This is not an intuitive table, and I apologize, but I could not think of another way to do it. So this shows the job losses and recoveries by economic industry categories within Boulder MSA. And we're looking at February 2020 through May 2021. The red lines show the jobs that were lost. The green lines show the jobs they have gained back. And if you look down, you can see some of them have done pretty well. Mining, logging, and construction lost 300 jobs. They've gained back 500, so they grew. Manufacturing lost 800, but they've gained back 1,700. They grew. But you look at the leisure and hospitality category, they lost 11,500. They've only gained back 7,500. So they're running at a deficit. And the next slide. This is just another way of looking at the turnover rate and how it correlates with salaries. So the x-axis shows the salary, the y-axis shows the turnover rate, and there's a definite negative correlation. The lower the salary, the higher the turnover rate. The higher the salary, the lower the turnover rate. And the next slide. So one of the other things we were looking at was what incentivizes people to return to work. And wages are definitely a part of what people want to have when they return to work, but there's more to it than that. People want to be able to pay for the things that they need. They want to pay for childcare. They want to be able to meet their living expenses, and they want a job that is going to give them a quality of work. They want to have an occupation or a job where they're getting something other than just their income. This table, we looked at the turnover rate, and it reinforces what the last one did with the correlations. The turnover rate's very high for lower paying positions. And much less, below 50% for the higher paying positions. And in looking at the quality of work, can we go to the next slide? We found this, which was from a nonprofit who outlined what they feel is a framework that provides a job that offers a quality job. And compensation is part of it, but there's more to it. There's support and there's opportunity. There's knowing that there's more there than just money and the insecurity of, am I not going to be able to move up? Am I not going to be able to have something more from this job? And that was the beginning of our investigation into this topic. And I suspect we'll be doing more as time goes by.
Thank you so much, Barb and Nora and Tonya. I know that you had to step in, that Aaron had to leave unexpectedly this week. And thank you so much for covering, and also the work that you've done throughout the pandemic. So really appreciate you all. And for the next piece, in terms of, let's see if I can advance my slide here. So we have the contact information. We'll be sure to send all this information out. And then just in terms of doing presentations from each of the communities, I'll do as quick as I can overview of our pandemic efforts here at Boulder County.
Summer?
So, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I am going to, if we can just take a quick little break.
Oh yeah.
Because we typically take a break in the middle just for a few minutes for folks to stand up and stretch. And then the other pieces, I want to make sure folks are get a chance to think about your questions that you might have. And then, is this the last section of your presentation, Summer?
It is. And so
okay.
If other communities want to go first too, we can go last.
And that's okay. I want to check in on time and the rest of the agenda. So why don't we take we'll take a 4-minute break. That's how flexible we are from our 5-minute break normally. Let's take a 4-minute break, and then we'll come back and hear the end of Summer Law's presentation. And then we have Broomfield's here to present tonight, Lyons and Louisville. And so we'll, I think, hold our questions for everybody to the end. So thanks for your patience. And then we can have some dialogue, and also we still have to catch up on our old business and any new business that needs to be added. So I just want to check in with everybody. So does that work? I got a few thumbs up. Okay, go grab your dessert and we'll be back. You'll hear my voice in 3.5 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
John. Hi, this is Barbara.
Hey, Barb.
Hi, I just wanted to tell you your presentation was really interesting.
Oh, thank you. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. It was some really interesting statistics and metrics there.
Well, great. And you know, I'd say to the extent, I mean, I'm following your stuff too. So let's keep connected on that. Yeah. I will say this too, that you know, I was a stand-in. Do you know Corinne?
Yes,
Walden?
I
Yeah.
do.
So she is even has a deeper sense of it too. So and Scott Sternberg. So at some point we should all get together and connect.
I would like that very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I put my email and stuff in the chat, so.
Yeah, I swiped it.
Cool. Great, you know what, why don't we plan, if we can, get together online, or
Sure.
that would be awesome. Wonderful. Thanks, Barb.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm gonna jump off, because I've been working since 7 o'clock this morning and I want to go eat dinner. So,
Thanks,
but
Barb, for being here.
oh, sure.
There
I
you were
just-
released. There you go.
Yeah.
Higher authority. Good.
Anyway, I enjoyed all this. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Barb, before you go, I think if you can do a breakdown by demographics in the future, I know it's very difficult. It would be very interesting to know.
It is very difficult, and that is one of the things we've been talking about. I've been part of the group that's looking at the digital divide, and I wanted to pull some of that data into. That's even harder to get a hold of. So thank you. Yeah, that's a definite direction to add in. And it's getting easier the more people are asking for that kind of data. We just have to be the squeaky wheels to ask for it.
Well, if we all are squeaky wheels, maybe we'll get some information we've been asking for a really long time.
So you have my email. If anybody has questions or comments or ideas or suggestions or thoughts, send me an email. And thank you again for inviting us.
Yep, thank you, Barb. All right, everybody, we are gonna come back and join. While people are popping back in, I know we had a few people that did join that didn't get a chance to just say their name and title to make sure that we've gotten to introduce you. So I think Chris joined us, Joni, and I apologize if I'm missing someone else. But if either of you want to just say hello. Okay, that's okay. You'll have a chance here in a minute when we do questions and answers. So Summer, we're going to come back to you and finish your presentation, and then we'll jump in with the other consortium members who have presentations as well.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to advance here.
There we go.
Yep, there we go. So just a note, I know Yvette talked about the City of Boulder's approach to economic recovery and vitality. Here was the mission that we really focused on in our response recovery, really looking to an equitable response and recovery, and focusing on compliance with public health orders and recovering better. So several immediate response activities are listed here. Obviously, the coordinated response with all the folks on the call here and the staff at all the cities and towns and others. We did a couple rounds of small business grants in unincorporated Boulder County, and then quite a bit of work countywide. So huge thanks to the public health liaison team and Corinne Waldo for setting up sometimes twice, 3 times weekly webinars and calls, emails to send out the clear guidance from Boulder County Public Health as it became available to businesses, to answering questions. I think that was just over and over. That's still one of the biggest needs that we find within both from an employee standpoint and from businesses themselves. Thanks to Zach Swank and the PACE team that did work on distributing PPE and to-go supplies countywide. We also managed a $1.9 million funded project for small business grants countywide. We stood up communications campaigns with many of the partners on the call with using the Step Up HLA Ghana's campaign that was developed at the state, and then we did a subcontract here. So thanks to many of the business owners locally that participated in that. And then we also funded a program to support employee protections in the workplace and PPE supplies direct to employees and guidance to them. Thanks to Nick Robles for managing that project. We supported the Left Behind Workers Fund, and then obviously all the work that you heard about here from Workforce Boulder County, especially them setting up a call center that helped folks apply for unemployment assistance, even though that's not something they traditionally do. That's usually a state project, and we had folks calling from all over the state to Workforce Boulder County, and they were recognized by the state for providing that assistance. So thanks for that. In terms of what we look at, obviously we look at what's happening from a public health response and how that's impacting folks. I know we've talked a lot about everyone's kind of this uncertainty now as cases are rising. We also look at the inequity and who's impacted. I think you've probably seen these charts before, but in terms of this chart where you can see in green the actual Boulder County population, and then the light blue, the COVID cases, and how there's overrepresentation and disparity in terms of cases and hospitalizations within the Latinx community, and how that's impacting all sorts of disparities, and that many folks have talked about in this call. Other data we're tracking is listed here, obviously, along with our partners on the call. I won't go into that because we're going to be speedy here, but we do get a lot of qualitative feedback from the folks over at Boulder County Public Health that are helping people navigate when they are, when they do contract COVID and are trying to figure out how they're going to be able to isolate or quarantine. We're still finding it's really challenging for folks that have lower incomes, that still don't have access to paid health leave, and especially if they contract a second case, that they're not paid during that time. And so many people are choosing out of necessity to go back to work. This is the funding of the groups that we support with financial support each year, just our traditional funding that comes out of the county. And these are folks that are funded in 2021 with, again, focus on supporting pandemic support for businesses across the community. So that's it, and I'll stop sharing my screen and then pass it back over.
Great, thank you everybody that participated in those presentations. I don't want to start saying names because I'll miss somebody, so thank you. I want to turn it over then. We'll go with Burnfield first for their presentation on economic vitality, and then to Lyons, and then Louisville. And we're going to have to try and keep those presentations to our normal 5 to 7 minutes or so that we have some time for some question and answer and conversation. And Devin, are you presenting, or is Jeff?
Sorry about that. I was just getting my camera and my unmute button.
Not a problem.
We've gone back to in-person meetings, and I'm out of habit about just leaving that on and watching slides come up and talking without realizing what I'm doing. So thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is on here, but all the credit on this goes to Jeff Romine, who is actually driving our slides. So a lot of thanks. I'll quickly get through this because he has a lot of information in here, and he's really the expert on this. I just get the opportunity to speak to you all on this. So Broomfield has a diverse set of businesses, from local small owned businesses to large global headquarters. One of the new words that I learned on this was catalytic development, which is really kind of a targeted intervention that changes the way in which we provide infrastructure by restructuring the development patterns. Oftentimes this creates or recreates walkable urban areas. The benefits can include increased economic opportunities and job creation. So a cool new word that I learned today. Hopefully, I'm sure that you all knew that already, but if you didn't, you get a new word for the day. A big thing that I think that we're all talking about is that COVID-19 pandemic impact on us. One of the big things for us was, during the past 18 months, we had about 12% of our jobs were lost due to reduced employment, or about 5,000 positions. And by this summer, we've had 4,000 positions restored, which is really incredible. A lot of that kudos goes to our economic vitality staff team, our community for their support of our small businesses, and then those small businesses and their resiliency through this pandemic. One of the big things that our staff did was stand up a local small business support. We've given out $1 million in grants in 2020, or I should say over $1 million in grants in 2020 and 2021, with 149 businesses supported in 2020 and 130 in 2021 so far. So that was a huge thing. We started the Back to Business program, the enhanced regulations and programs to support those positions. That was really huge. Next slide, please. So the Catalytic Developments. So we have 3 of these developments right now. Baseline, which is in the northeast corner of Broomfield, the Flatirons redevelopment, which is near Flatiron Crossing Mall, and then our Broomfield Town Square, which is near our civic area where our government buildings are. Next slide, please. So a little bit more on this. So Baseline is going to be a new development. It's at the corner of I-25 and Colorado 7. This is going to be a huge development. It's kind of almost, I mean, it's basically like a small town in a small area. I mean, so 9,000 single family and multifamily homes, shopping, dining. This is going to be a lot of walkable, bikeable community. We are going to be featuring the relocation of the Butterfly Pavilion. There will be a new STEM school, K-12 STEM school, and you know it's really kind of been branded as this science city, and there's going to be a lot of cool stuff. The development has already started on that, and it's moving closer and closer to the kind of to the really high density city center of that. The other one is the Burnfield Town Square, which is a topic that we've talked for over 20 years on. And we're getting so close to the groundbreaking in 2022, and it just seems like we're right here in the middle of 2021. And yet our community's hungry for this, and there are points at which it seems so close and yet so far. So this is one in which we're very active in this. It's an infill development, which is very different than Baseline in how its development, how it's taken care of, and the partnership is between the Burnfield has a bigger partnership in that one than I would say Baseline. It just looks different. And then of course the last one is the redevelopment of Flatiron's Crossing Mall. Flatiron Crossing Mall is a huge asset to Broomfield. And as the malls have continued to change, the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on that, really looking at the opportunities for redevelopment, adding some more mixed use development in there, including the residential, including the office space, and really creating more of a space for a live, work, and play opportunity there at Flatiron Crossing Mall. Next slide, please. So the business expansion and attraction. So I think that this is a big area right now that especially Jeff Romine and the other members of the Economic Vitality, as well as our city and county manager's office, is really leading on. So the expansion is really creating business opportunity alert program, partnering with established businesses with those spaces that are available. So really connecting those two pieces to grow businesses here in Broomfield. Discussing the community advantages and learning of those concerns. So really connecting more and more. And I think that this is one of those areas where, well, I'll get to that in a minute, but the attraction piece is the targeted business clusters and opportunities. So really, you know, that bolded line right there, Broomfield believes in growing and sustaining our local area economy. This is so true and becomes much more apparent as we've gone through the COVID-19. Next slide, please. So the small business support. So I think this is what I was going to go into is the COVID-19 pandemic really forced our government staff to better connect with businesses and network those businesses. And so that business outreach and support really became a big area. We were forced to connect with those businesses on a much deeper level and a quicker level as well because of the pandemic. And because of that, we've been able to develop a much more robust business campaign in which we are partnering with businesses, in which we are really highlighting those businesses, because one, we know those businesses so much better now. We have a very good relationship with them. And through the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, the support to business success and their growth. And I think that that's a huge thing. The entrepreneurs support work with Small Business Development Center. That's a huge thing for us. And then supporting, you know, one of the pieces that I really love in here is the supporting local residents, well, I guess this is kind of that entrepreneur piece, which is supporting local residents to grow local businesses. And that's kind of the piece that is really being established. And that's kind of coming out of that COVID-19 pandemic as well. But turning to the creative economy, so part of the entrepreneur as well as the business outreach and support, this is, this creative economy is something that's really huge here in Colorado. And the 5 creative industry clusters, which encompass music, theater, dance, visual arts is one cluster, culinary arts, design and advertising another cluster, creative technology, the 4th cluster, and then architecture and living spaces as the 5th cluster. So looking at those clusters and really kind of trying to galvanize those here for Broomfield, it's one in which we have a lot of opportunity and a lot of foundation to build upon. So I'm very excited about that. And then last slide, I think, maybe it's not quite the last slide, but it's close. Measure and progress. So I think that, for me, it really comes down to what are goals and programs without metrics and measurements. And this is where Jeff Romine and his team have really pushed the limits on this. So it all starts with council priorities and looking at what are priorities. And specifically, we have economic vitality, we have Broomfield Town Square, we have the creative economy, but we also have things like transportation, affordable housing within there as well, sustainability, and those pieces impact those. We integrate that with Broomfield's comprehensive plan, the long-range financial plan, and then of course, which is Jeff's brilliance. And I'll also give a shout out to John Hall, who's also working with economic vitality, which is this development matrix and the economic vitality staff. This is where, really this team has partnered with council, the Broomfield Chamber of Commerce, the business community, and the residents of Broomfield to really build a economic core and economic vitality, for lack of a better word, to how Broomfield is going to succeed and prosper in the future. So Jeff, I think that's the end of the slides. Yes, it is. Thank you. So hopefully I kept it under 5 minutes, but I look forward to any questions. And of course, Jeff is on the line too to answer any questions.
Yeah, that's great. There's a question in the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and send it over to you, Devin. It says, isn't the new in-car complex being built in Broomfield?
Jeff, I'll tee that to you.
Yeah, so there is a small, relatively small, compared to what has happened, obviously what's in Boulder, that's next to the airport, and it's part of the testing related to climate. So it's next to the Rocky Mountain Airport, Rocky Mountain Metro Airport, which the front door is in Broomfield, but most of the airport is actually in Jefferson County. So we share that airport in some ways, but we can't necessarily call it ours. But that's where that's located. The one other thing I would just add to what the council member talked about, and just we always try to say this when we're talking about the Flatirons Crossing redevelopment, the mall will continue to stay. So they are reinvesting in the mall itself, but it's the areas around it. And some of you who have wandered into Broomfield lately, you also noticed that what was once called the Flatirons Marketplace, that has been redeveloped right now, and we will be getting some new housing right at that station, that BRT station that stops. So we'll be seeing roughly an additional 1,000 housing units there, as well as what the council member talked about with Flatirons Crossing redevelopment. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize that, because you see those buildings up when you're wandering along 36 or the bike path, more importantly.
Great, thank you both. I'm going to move us over to Lyons, and we'll hopefully get some, if folks have more questions for Devin and Jeff, we can get back to those.
Thank you, everybody. And let me just see if I can get this in screen show real quick. I am not good at that, so I am just gonna keep it like this in the interest of time. Really appreciate everybody's participation tonight. And it's great to see our county partners and our local partners. So Lyons, as you probably know, is a bit of an outlier. We have, I think, a little over 900 roofs in town limits. So that's 900 homes. And our economic status looks a little bit different than anywhere else in the county, I think, except perhaps Ned. So I'm going to start out by saying we have some cool new spots. And in the town of Lyons, economic vitality means 3 cool new spots because we've got a really tiny main street. So we're so happy to welcome A Lodge to Lyons. They have redeveloped a former motel and it's gorgeous, and they're building a beer garden. And Moxie Bakery recently opened in Lyons to great fanfare and success, and we love them. And finally, Mainstage Brewing took over the Fork building. They bought the Fork building and the lot next to it for a beer garden and music. So just a little plug if you want to come to Lyons and have a beer and some really good pastries. So we have a lot of challenges, and I'm not going to go into what we did in terms of COVID response. It's sort of a smaller version of everything we've heard here tonight, and we're so grateful for the grant funding that helped our small businesses stay afloat during that time. Really happy to say that now the festivals are happening again. Lyons is really jumping, and it's so great to see people out and about in Main Street and enjoying our parks and our river. So more than 90% of our tax revenue so far this year in the last half of 2020 came from online sales. So even though our revenues are actually up, our local sales revenues are down. So we're looking at ways to support new businesses coming to town and revitalizing our downtown, and some grants that we've gotten to help with transportation and multimodal paths. That'll be really, really helpful. We've also had some local business attrition as people are looking for bigger spaces. We have a lot of arts and music and some great entrepreneurship in Lyons, and people tend to outgrow the spaces. So that's one of the challenges that we're facing. We also have a loss of essential service businesses. So we've lost our town doctor, we've lost our pharmacy. This is over the past 8 years or so. And we've lost our laundromat. And in a really small town, in order to not be a bedroom community of another town, we really need to figure out, I think, how to attract those essential service businesses. And so, our staff has been constrained as a small town. We were very cautious when we did budgeting last year because we did not know what was going to happen. So the good news is we've got a number of really wonderful businesses that want to come to Lyons. We're talking about redeveloping the Eastern Corridor out by the 6636 intersection. And we're constrained by processes that weren't built for this kind of volume internally. And so, one question that I had of this group that maybe we could get into is how you manage service level agreements with your constituents who come to you for help in something like a development process. And so in our small town, we have our Economic Vitality Commission, and I'm going to ask Paul to add anything that he thinks I've missed when I'm done, and just a couple more slides. We've got our local Chamber of Commerce, which is great. We're a part of the Main Street program, which is wonderful. We have a terrific Main Street manager, and the DOLA assistance and cooperation is so appreciated. We are applying to become a certified local government, which will help us retain our historic buildings and perhaps create historic districts and help people revitalize those buildings, make them more energy efficient. And we have a zero interest revolving loan fund for our businesses. This also came in really handy during the height of the pandemic. Businesses can apply for up to $10,000 in funding, absolutely no interest. We have almost 100% repayment rate. I think we've loaned out hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we haven't had any defaults. So it's a really great program. And so what we're grappling with now, like I said, is how do we attract and retain essential services? How do we make it easier for our businesses to work through the current development process? The workforce, of course, is a big deal. We're about to break ground on an affordable housing project finally, but it's simply not enough. And then finally, how do we entice tourists to stop in Lyons on their way to and from the park? We've heard from some businesses that the timed entry system is affecting them adversely because people are speeding through. They got to get there at the timestamp. And so that was something that was an unexpected outcome of that. So that is my very brief presentation. I'm sorry if I talk too quickly. I want to be cognizant of time, and I'll just ask Paul, if you have anything that you would like to add.
You know, in the interest of time, I don't want to add too many things, but just two quick things. One, we are in discussions with a really fun private-public partnership with a developer on that eastern corridor that Holly mentioned. And then the second thing, I really liked the very brief chatter in the chat about folks coming to Lyons and getting together, and would love to support that. This group, as Holly mentioned, Lyons tends to be a different town makeup than a lot of other folks on the call. So I think there's a lot for both of us to learn from each other and getting together in a more casual setting as well. So if someone could take the lead on that, maybe throw it in the chat, and I'm happy to be of support, and we'll host you up in Lyons.
That'd be great. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Thank you both. Holly, hang on to your question about how do you manage, and I think you said service level type of request, and I missed a word in my notes, but hang on to that question, and hopefully someone's thinking about it that they can respond. And yes, first round on Paul, I think everybody in this group probably would accept. so yes, if somebody wants to take the lead on that, we will convene. So
I'll do that.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Louisville.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm just going to bring up my screen here. Let's see. Oh, is that the wrong one? That looks like the wrong.
Well, and while you're doing that, what I may have folks do is that have questions for the presenters, just to start typing in the chat, and then I'll be able to field some of those when you're done.
Can you see my slides now?
You're ready. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it. And thanks. It's really nice to be with you all. I'm flying solo today. Our staff has some commitments tonight. So I'm going to be the first to admit that a lot of this has been the work of our staff. I also didn't realize that we were having a competition about who did the most for our businesses for COVID, but we win. No, I'm just kidding. I do want to, so I'll put in some plugs for businesses, and I'm so glad that Moxie has come to Lyons, because I feel a personal point of pride for Moxie because they exist in my ward in Louisville. So anyway, we're lots of great things going on in Louisville. Let me tell you a little bit about it. So we wanted to make sure that we had a real sort of unified vision in terms of economic development, economic vitality in Louisville. And so when the mayor took office, Mayor Stoltzman took office in 2019, we reimagined how we thought about business, retention, development. We created a council-specific committee on economic vitality, and we began this process just before the pandemic started about economic vitality and creating a strategic plan. And so, you know, we adopted that strategic plan first in 2020, and our council committee on economic vitality really led this effort, obviously. And so it really lays out our vision for 3 to 5 years. And I think, you know, we think it's important. Obviously, we did a lot that was responsive to, especially to the pandemic. So we did 3 different rounds of business assistance grants that totaled $1 million. We did work to support, you know, folks who had been, families who had been affected by the pandemic and help with utility bills. We closed our main street so that there could be extra seating for restaurants, and you know, that main street, we take a lot of pride in it. I feel a lot of kinship with Lyons in that way, because our main street is kind of like the even if it isn't the most sales tax generating it is sort of the spiritual center of economic development in Louisville, and we've been able to work with developers to maintain the historic character of a lot of those buildings while still getting some new businesses in. And we just did some really interesting work with a building that used to be Waterloo, one Waterloo down the street, and then anyway, we did a whole historic preservation grant there. So we're excited about that. We have a whole process and an outline flow chart of how this sort of the committee developed the purpose and the objectives, and then the strategic plan, and what the strategic plan does. And I think it's really important for us to think that, you know, there's elements that involve sort of a broad vision statement, there's goals related to it, and then there's measures that we can use, quantifiable data. And, you know, since I've been on council, I've been really pushing Louisville to make sure that, you know, whether we're evaluating our city manager or whether we're evaluating our programs, you know, we need to be coming up with actual data to know whether these things are working. And so we're going to continue to do that. And having these sort of key performance indicators embedded in the strategic plan is a key part of the work that we're doing. So, you know, all of the plan itself has many actions and tasks. So it's, you know, broad overarching vision, goal, and then, you know, how do we support those strategic goals, and who's assigned that? And so it almost reads like if you look at our strategic plan on the internet, you might think, well, this is the most boring thing I've ever read. But it is a very sort of action oriented and kind of methodical implementation of the sort of philosophical and vision, economic vitality vision. And so now I'm feeling a little inadequate because I don't have fancy pictures of downtown here on these slides. But anyway, Burnfield was making me feel particularly so good job, Burnfield. So here are some of the goals that we have in our strategic plan. So retention and attraction strategies. You know, I think Louisville, like many communities, has suffered from, you know, we had a big boom in the 90s of big box stores, and then Sam's Club and Kohl's have left, and Alfalfa's left during the pandemic. Now what do we do with all these big spaces, right? And so we got to retain what we have, and we got to figure out new ways to attract businesses. So we want to make sure, I think there's kind of a myth in the business community that, you know, Louisville is somehow hostile to business. We want to make sure that people know that's a myth, and that we are open for business and we're excited about it. So improving our business climate. We want to have programs that are focused on increasing our total retail sales and sources of revenue generating activities. So it's not just, you know, filling spaces, but it's about generating sales tax. Obviously, we want to facilitate a diverse mix of quality job opportunities, and in really investing in practices that are environmentally sustainable. And part of that sustainability element, when we survey residents in Louisville, we hear about two things: economic vitality and environmental sustainability. So it's important for us to put those together in our strategic plan. So lots of measures and things related to our particular strategic plan. And then, you know, again, we check in on them periodically on a regular clip. And we're really just beginning to evaluate how some of those things are doing. So we just had our most recent sort of quarterly scorecard. And so, you know, we're sort of the pandemic response has been sort of embedded in all of these. And then I think that's really important to highlight, that we take the strategic goals and then think about what are the actions that really, you know, move those along in the context of whatever is currently going on. So that's the end of my presentation today. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about what Louisville is doing, and thanks for bearing with me with some of my good-natured comments about all of our presentations tonight. So.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I am going to just open it up to some questions for folks who might have some questions on any of the presentations. And we'll have around 5 or 6 minutes to do that before we kind of close up with announcements. Holly?
Yeah, so one thing we're looking at, budget season is coming up here, and we realized, I think in Lions, that the folks who work for the town are really constrained when it comes to getting development through our development process. And so one idea that I had was to create a position for someone who would be sort of a liaison or a development buddy for anybody who wants to walk through the process, a development director. And so I'm wondering if any of you folks on the call have a position like that in your municipality, and if not, how do you ensure that the process goes smoothly for the folks who want to develop something?
And this is Jeff from Burnfield. So I'll start, Holly, just to give you some sense. So that's exactly been a concern, not just for us, but almost for every community. So you're not alone. So first off, know that. And secondly, the way that we have done it is as Councilmember Schaaf pointed out, we changed something and we created what's called an economic vitality matrix. And there's no magic to it other than what we're trying to do is tell folks ahead of time before they even start the conversation, before they start going through a process of what we're looking for and where we think it makes sense. And so to some degree that is the city manager, that's myself and others, that as we get inquiries or as we begin the conversation, we want to help them understand the process, but also understand where it's going to make sense. So rather than trying to figure out a way to get to a point of saying no, we're trying to get into an early yes. And as everybody that works for government knows, the easiest thing to get is a no. The hardest thing is to get a yes. And I don't mean that poorly, I just mean that's the way it is. So that's how we've started doing it, and are trying to encourage our developers to reach out even before they get too deep into a process. And so to some degree, it's us that are here taking on that change in orientation rather than taking on an additional work role. It's us thinking differently. I hope that helps.
That does help. And if you would forward me an example of that, if you could, I would be most appreciative. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you both. And Jeff, if that economic development matrix is something you would like to share with the group, you could send it to Mark, and Mark could send it out with the minutes after this meeting. And likewise, for those who presented, if you'd like to do that, or anyone else that has some documents that sound like something folks might want to read about. Next question. Councilmember Brown.
Thanks, Commissioner. I wanted to sort of pick folks' brains a little bit about how they go out and recruit businesses. I think that's one of the great challenges that we have. Especially, I talked about some of our vacant retail space, which has been a particular focus of mine on council. How is it that your communities are approaching that? It sounds like Burnfield is doing a lot with some of the space that used to be part of Flatiron Marketplace. I'm just interested in, especially for a smaller community like Louisville, what do you think are some best practices, and what can our staff be doing, or should we be creating more staff? I'll stop talking, but I appreciate any thoughts you all have on that.
Wow, do I appreciate everybody who has to go deal with other stuff. Mine's older, but you still got to deal with stuff. I really appreciate your question, Kyle, and I really appreciate this opportunity to collaborate with you all. Boulder has never been in a space of really desiring necessarily to recruit businesses. I think first we want to be entrepreneurial friendly and thoughtful in retaining our primary employers, and that reputation has helped. But what really helped us was completing the retail strategy, because then we see our gaps, and there are some. Affordable and inclusive goods and services, children's clothing, right? Ethnic foods. These are things that we just don't have, and it's going to be challenging for us to get it. When I looked at affordable goods and services through the retail strategy, some of that you can do, but for example, the loss of several grocery stores, we have quite a challenge downtown right now because it's infilling with residences, but there's no grocery because the grocery store closed. So these are challenges that we have. We're looking at that, and I basically make it my business to meet probably more than once a month, more like every other week with our head of planning, to say, if this comes forward, I need to be in the room. Or if I bring you someone, can we have a real sit down and talk about how this could happen? And it is challenging because I also want to respect that the code is the code for a reason, and that everybody has a job to do. And so it's a balance, and kind of piggybacks off of Holly's question that we're in the process. We used to have that buddy job, but it became sort of the advocate of who's right and who's wrong, or ways to work around, and that was not helpful internally. And it wasn't respectful and didn't create collaboration within the staff. So I think really working at being one Boulder in the consideration of things like the retail study that will, we hope, influence some of the decisions in the comp plan update, will help us kind of tell businesses, we need this. So if you're that, please come. And so that's some of what we're doing, but it is a challenge. Thanks for your question.
Yeah. Add in as a partner with of that, and so much of this. So right on about the understanding what your existing businesses development pattern is. That is a great way to recognize opportunities for their development in other areas of your community. So that's part of the retention strategy, but it also is redevelopment. And another thing, Yvette was hitting on it, but I'll just put an exclamation point on it. When I think about the areas, let's say Centennial Valley, which seems to be what you might be referencing, a clear development plan and vision. And that is going to be a signal for the business developers to say, okay, I feel like there's a path for me here. They've been burned enough times by going into a community and not having clear direction and spending too much money on plans that then ultimately are down the road rejected. So clear design, I think, is key.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that feedback. We've done studies, small area plans, you know, I think I don't know exactly what the developers are waiting for exactly. I think there's a cynical part of me that thinks that the developers are waiting for us to let them build gazillions of, you know, residential units, because I think they make more money on residential units. But for the city, obviously, we want the commercial. So, so I think that's part of the challenge that we face, and sometimes it seems like developers are and property owners are happy to sit on property and let it be vacant for a while. So, but I agree with you that like having a plan is important, and that's why I think the strategic plan has been helpful. So thank you for that. And I also appreciate Berenice's comment about attracting Latino businesses. I want to connect with you all and others on that. So thank you.
Great. We have just a teensy bit of time here. Devin, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I always love when we have staff from the feds or from the state legislature. And today it looks like we have Chris Rourke from Hickenlooper's office. And you know, we've talked a lot about kind of that local government and local community of recovery from our pandemic. And there was a mention about the infrastructure bill that you know, hopefully comes at some point, not just the bipartisan one, but the larger infrastructure bill. But we also have a reconciliation you know, measure hopefully coming soon to us that's, you know, going to advance a lot of those pieces that had to do with the American Rescue Package. And I'm curious to get Chris Rourke's you know, thoughts on where Hickenlooper stands on this and what that could potentially do for a lot of our local communities.
Hey there, folks. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. In terms of the bipartisan infrastructure package, I know this has been, a long, like 4 or 5 months of going back and forth on where we are. It seems, I would be a fool to make any prognostications and cement them right now about what the Senate might do. But it's looking like the amendments that are getting put up are mostly friendly, that are going to be passed, and we're looking hopefully for the bill to advance the Senate in the next week or two. Of course, many things could happen. Someone could step up and the GOP could step up and have a bunch of unfriendly amendments, or last minute disagreements could take shape, but it's looking pretty good right now. In terms of the reconciliation package, it's questionable whether they will actually vote. The idea would be that they pass bipartisan infrastructure and then take a vote on to at least open debate on a reconciliation package before leaving for the August recess. But again, things are pretty unsure. In terms of what comes from the final package, the Senate has their numbers. Obviously, the House is a little bit more aggressive in trying to get more money into the package. So, what happens in the House is uncertain, and that'll probably take us, into September. So, obviously, the general frames of how much money is going to whom that the White House has put out and others have put out are accurate as of now, but how that
Is anyone else listening to silence?
I think we lost you, Chris.
Yeah.
3.5 trillion.
We may have lost you, Chris.
I like the sound of trillion.
Yes, thanks, Summer, for typing. Okay. Well,
may go down in negotiations. It's hard to tell.
Okay, you're in and out there, Chris.
Sorry, home internet is a little bit rough today, but
we got you now.
If you take anything from that, everything is clear as mud, and we're hoping to get the bipartisan infrastructure package across the finish line and hopefully get a vote on the reconciliation bill before recess. Okay,
great. Thank you. All right, y'all, I'm gonna have to keep you just a couple more minutes because we have a few different things. One, just to follow up from our last meeting, thank you for everybody who jumped into our additional meeting for the year. I do feel like we need to have our own debrief session just to talk about that conversation. We're not gonna have time tonight. So I will make sure that we have some agenda time on our next meeting, which is October 6th. And I'm going to ask a couple of folks that were there to just join us for a brief update. But I think it's a conversation we all need to have together in reflection with a little bit of time together. So I don't want to leave that pending as though it's not an item to discuss. And then the other piece was the question about in-person. And at this point, we aren't going to make any plans for in-person. As y'all know, some new guidelines will come out Monday, if not sooner, for all of us. So that might be another point of conversation in October. So I just want to make sure that that question's answered as well. Someone asked about ARPA. So I just want to make sure that you all are aware that the county is receiving $63.3 million. We are leading a community engagement process. You all will be invited to convene your own towns, cities, municipalities, organizations, et cetera, where county will have a facilitator and a community engagement person to support that with you if you want to bring your community members together, whether it's business folks or however you want to do that. So I just want to make sure that you know that that is coming and you all will be invited to what degree you want to participate and use that resource. I'm inviting you to use that resource so that we can get information about what our community members need from that ARPA for all of our distributions, but specifically from Boulder County, and to be able to share that information again with smaller towns and larger towns, et cetera. So that's just in response to a few of the different questions that were out there. If folks have other announcements that they do want to share, I'm just going to ask you with all humbleness to email those over to Mark in the next 24 hours. And when he sends out the minutes and the recording of this meeting, then I'll ask him to include those along with any presentations and slides that were shared, with any resources that folks had asked for that we can share. So I appreciate everybody's patience this evening. Great information. And what's so still exciting to me about this is I heard tidbits that we can all share, and I heard asks, and I'm hoping that folks respond so that we can do some of this good work together. And feel free to reach out to me and for others that put their information in. So I don't want to keep you any longer, but appreciate the collaboration. So everybody have a wonderful night. Thanks again to all the staff who stayed on, because as electeds, we all have to stay on. But our staff, it's really important, and we appreciate each one of you throughout the county and Burnfield too. Thanks, you all. Have a fantastic night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Good
care.
night.
Good night.